what did I learn in Gaza? I learned that there is no ceasefire in Gaza. I know that Israeli troops left Gaza at the end of January, and their newspaper said there was a ceasefire. There is no ceasefire. And I'm going to show you a short video, I hope, but it's not here yet. Here it is, to prove that to you. I don't know exactly what you can see, but I will tell you, these are farmers trying to go out to their fields near their homes at the border. Israel has annexed about 300, de facto annexed about 300 meters of land, and here's what's happening. They're trying to harvest. We can have a little sound. Louder.
That's the closest that we've had. The other one's very close. That was one of the worst. Okay, I'm going to try not to die live on camera.
So that video was shot at the end of February, beginning of March, but what you saw there is actually continuing to happen almost every day. Just to give you an example, I went back and looked at the reports since we left Gaza of attacks on farmers. So here, June 2nd to 9th, 3 farmers injured by Israeli gunfire. June 10th to 16th, farmers fired on. Tanks entered Gaza in 3 areas on the land side to go after the farmers. June 17th to 23rd, farmers fired on, 2 kidnapped, bulldozers invaded and tore up the farmland. June 24th to 30th, a 10-year-old injured who was out with farmers when the Israelis shot at them. So, and, July 1st to 7th, a 17-year-old girl was killed when a shell hit her home, and her father and uncle were injured by gunfire. Now, so that's what I mean when I say there's no ceasefire. The Israelis are shooting at unarmed civilians on a pretty constant basis. So that was something that I learned. And this no man's land, by the way, actually extends in many places about a mile into Gaza. That takes about 30% of Gaza's farmland, where the farmers go to farm and they're shot at when they try to harvest their crops. So that's, I can't tell you how many have been shot and killed or injured since the end of the incursion in January, but you can see that just the activity I described to you means that this is continuing to go on. I could show you, if I had the time, a similar video about fishermen. Gaza has about 6,000 fishermen. Most of those fishing boats are not. Gaza has about 6,000 fishermen. Most of those fishing boats are not operating right now because of the attacks from what I would describe as Israeli pirates. I really think Gaza has a problem kind of like the shipping channels are facing from the Somalis, except that the Somalis may have a different reason for why they are pursuing piracy. But the Israelis are pursuing piracy for a very specific reason, which is a military reason, and they are they are stealing boats, they're kidnapping fishermen. Typically, the rule is, the international rule is you can fish 12 miles offshore. The Oslo Agreement gave fishermen 20 miles to fish offshore from Gaza. The Israelis, in the so-called ceasefire that was agreed to at the end of January, said 3 miles. They're shooting at fishermen as close as 300 yards from shore. And in fact, after we left, they shot people on the beach. So that's basically what's going on. The fishermen typically are shot at with live ammunition. They're shot at with water cannons. The UN reporters of this are saying that no warning is given them until the gunfire opens. And then when they are surrounded by gunboats, they are forced to take their clothes off, jump into the sea, and swim to the gunboat, where they are then taken to Israel and held prisoner. And by the way, that's despite the fact that the Israeli Supreme Court ruled these kidnappings illegal. If their boats are returned to them, they're typically damaged. We spent some time with a fishing captain named Hassan in the Gaza City port. 2 weeks after we left, he was kidnapped. His boat was taken from him. It was returned with the engine destroyed and full of holes. So that's the only way I could describe these people is as valiant. These are valiant people who are not willing to cede their land nor their trade to Israel's illegal occupation or acts. And so day after day, they risk death just by going to work. They're just going to work. These are unarmed civilians. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about the tunnels, because I think those are, as I say, I'm trying to tell you things about Gaza that you don't know already, that you haven't read in the papers. So these tunnels are not secret structures. They're not hidden under buildings. They're in the open. If you were to walk down the border, the street that runs along the border at Rafah, it would strike you as being almost like a row of shops. There are that many tunnels, one after another. And many of them don't even have a cover over them. So you're saying, why is Israel then saying, Egypt has to help us stop this arms smuggling. They're not helping us. Arms are being smuggled through these tunnels. Are they helpless? I don't think so. I think Israel could close the tunnels down with really a single bombing run, because they're all out in the open. So what are they doing? They let them operate subject to what I would only describe as random violence. Every now and then, they bomb a tunnel. They bomb 2 tunnels, 3 tunnels. There's 1,000 tunnels. And the consequence of that is some people are killed. The bombings weaken some of the other tunnels, so there are tunnel collapses. There's not a week that goes by without people dying in the tunnels. When the Israelis put pressure on the Egyptians, and this is truly horrifying, on the question of the tunnels, the Egyptians pump methane gas into the tunnels. So people die that way as well from suffocation. So these tunnels, they exist because Israel sees them as I guess I would say, a dangerous check valve on the siege. If there is, for those who can pay, goods can come in. That means that the people with money are not as hard hit by the siege as the 70 or 80% of the people without money. Israel can insist that there's no humanitarian crisis in Gaza, because when you go into a store in Gaza, it's not empty. It's not full, but it's not empty. And civil society in Gaza is being undermined by this tunnel business, which is creating a mafia of tunnel operators. It's creating corruption in the government. And it is, of course, creating resentment among the population. So in many ways, it's just another way of undermining civil society and of further drawing Egypt into complicity with the siege. So meanwhile, there is a pretty simple solution, which would be if Israel would open the crossings, they would have the right to inspect everything that went into Gaza. The tunnels would not be able to function because they would no longer be cost competitive. They would close, and Israel would not have to be able to claim that weapons were being smuggled into Gaza. So I would say it has a purpose which relates much more to the overall purpose of the occupation, which is to marginalize and destroy civil society in Gaza, than it does to any military purpose. So that's what I have to say, and I'm going to move on to let Samer tell you what he learned and wants to share with you about